started. Yeah,
Good morning. Clyde, so if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask any of us. We're here for you during your stay here at Sumter. Now, hopefully we've all come to Fort Sumter with the knowledge that the very first shots of the Civil War occurred here on April 12, 1861. Are we all on page on that one? If not, just smile. Okay, very good. Now, those shots occurred, we're coming up, it's almost been 151 years later. Why are you still here? Why do you still care? What does the Civil War still mean to us today? So my talk is about 15 minutes long. I'm not holding you captive, so if you'd like to wander off at any point, please do so. I won't be offended. And just really quick, if you can hear me, please raise your hand. I just want to check the people in the very back. Can you folks on the benches hear me all right? Oh, excellent. All right. So, to understand what this nation had gone through and where we had gotten to by April of 1861, we do have to go back a little bit. Well, we have to go back quite a ways. We have to go back to the Constitutional Convention of 1787. And I go back this far because this is the very first time that this nation is facing the issue of slavery on a national level. Over the next 80 years, we'll see this issue penetrate our social lives, our economic lives, and also our political lives. And it will change us in many dramatic ways. We're going to see compromises being dealt with between the federal government and personal citizens and states, as arguments will come up between states' rights about the issue of slavery, human rights, property rights. All of these issues will circulate and bring us to this point of war in April of 1861. Now, economically, something we're more familiar with. As the North begins to industrialize and the South maintains its agrarian roots, we have to consider what kind of labor system is supporting these two very different economies. At the same time, this nation is going through very dramatic social changes, something we might not tend to think about. Different identities are forming, no longer just feeling a sense of nationalism, a sense of loyalty to our state, but as the century progresses, we're starting to see an identity of a northerner and a southerner. And by 1850, this was very, very deep. So much so that a private citizen will comment around 1850 that Yankees and Southerns have become so entirely separated by climate, by morals, by religion, and by estimate so totally opposite of all that constitutes honor, truth, and manliness that they cannot longer exist under the same government. So there's an awareness here that we have to keep in mind. Now, when will this issue of slavery really start to affect our politics? Again, we have to look at mid-century. We're looking at the concept of manifest destiny, this idea that this nation can expand from the Atlantic to the Pacific. We also have new lands acquired from the Mexican-American War. We have the California Gold Rush of 1849. All of these factors will push huge amounts of people into these new untouched lands of the West. So what does this have to do with politics and slavery? Earlier on in the century, the federal government, aware of those economic and cultural changes between the North and the South, they're thinking, how will we maintain a balance of power in the federal government, back in Washington, between northern free states and southern slave states? What they decide to do is draw a geographical boundary line across new lands acquired earlier on, stating that any new state coming in north will automatically be admitted free, any state coming in south will automatically be slave. This will work out fairly well, again, until about mid-century. All of a sudden, the eyes of the nation will focus on Kansas, Nebraska. Now, the majority of this territory lies above that geographical boundary line, so if it were to be admitted, it would be a free state. But there are many Southerners who would like to settle that land, would like to develop their plantation-based economy, and thus bring their labor support system, slavery, with them. But according to the federal government, they're not allowed to do this. So this makes us think about those relationships that private citizens had with their state versus their federal government. People are very upset about this. So to resolve this debate, the federal government does away with that boundary line and uses a policy known as popular sovereignty. They say, why don't we let the people who are physically settling that territory decide for themselves through majority vote if they would like to be admitted free or slave? This sounds like a great democratic compromise on paper. But has anyone heard of the phrase bleeding Kansas? Most of you have. What this will turn into is one of the most hostile, violent civil conflicts in this nation prior to the Civil War.
her crew earned 11 battle stars and the presidential...